I had spent 2 years saving for our family Christmas trip. Then, hours before the flight, I overheard my mother tell my 17-year-old daughter, "This trip is for real family only." Before anyone woke up, I canceled every ticket and room and took my daughter to the airport. I expected them to scream about the money. Instead, Mom asked one terrified question. Did Hannah open box 14? What was inside that box? It was a little after 6 on Christmas Eve when my sister's name lit up my phone again. Hannah was asleep against my shoulder at Gate C12 in Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. She was still wearing the red sweater she had bought for the family Christmas photo, the one she had folded carefully into her suitcase the night before. My screen showed 38 missed calls. Another boarding announcement rolled through the terminal. My phone vibrated again. This time I answered. Melissa did not say hello. How could you do this to your own family? 3 hours earlier, I had canceled every ticket on the trip I had paid for. I canceled the hotel rooms, the suite my mother and Frank were supposed to use, and the airport transportation waiting in San Diego. Then I booked 2 seats on another flight. One for me. One for my daughter. Melissa kept talking, but for once I did not try to calm her down. I did not explain how much money I was losing. I did not apologize. I only said, "You were the ones who told Hannah she wasn't real family." Then my mother took the phone. What happened next changed the feeling in my chest. She did not ask about the tickets. She did not ask about the hotel. She did not ask why I had left before sunrise. She did not even ask whether Hannah was safe. Her first question was, "Did Hannah open box 14?" I looked down at my daughter. No. The silence that followed was different from anger. It was too sudden, too careful. Then, faintly in the background, I heard Melissa say, "That batch had to close at 9. I stopped breathing for a second. Until then, I had believed I was dealing with cruelty, familiar family cruelty. I thought my mother had waited until the last possible moment because she knew I had spent too much money to walk away easily. Some families do not control you by locking the door. They control you by making sure you have invested so much time, money, and hope that leaving feels more painful than staying. My mother had counted on that. But now there was a box, a batch, and a deadline at 9 in the morning, when every other adult in the family was supposed to be somewhere in the air. I tightened my arm around Hannah and watched snow move past the terminal windows. 3 months earlier, if anyone had told me the Christmas trip I was saving every spare dollar to pay for would become part of something larger, I would have thought they were being paranoid. Back then, I still believed our only problem was that my family had never really learned how to love my daughter. Back then, I still thought our problem was simple. I thought we were a family that did not know how to show affection very well. Hannah was finishing her last year of high school. College applications were already covering our kitchen table. Soon there would be dorm rooms, part-time jobs, new friends, and all the ordinary distance that comes when a child starts building a life beyond her mother. Before that happened, I wanted one good Christmas. Not a perfect one. Just 1 week when Hannah would not have to wonder whether she belonged. I had saved for almost 2 years. By the time everything was booked, the trip to San Diego was going to cost me close to $20,000. 5 airline tickets, 2 hotel rooms, a suite for my mother and Frank, airport transportation deposits, a few activities I thought everyone would enjoy. I never told them the total. I did not want gratitude measured in dollars. The truth was harder to admit. Money had become one of the ways I kept peace in my family. I was the person who made reservations when nobody else remembered. I changed flights when plans fell apart. I remembered birthdays, arranged rides to the airport, paid deposits when Melissa forgot, and helped my mother sort through paperwork she did not want to deal with. Being useful made me feel independent. Looking back, I was still trying to earn approval. My mother had a special softness in her voice when she spoke about Melissa. She called her our girl, as if the words came with a permanent place in the family. When my mother called me, my name was usually followed by a problem. There was another difference I had learned not to mention. The hallway in my mother's house was filled with Caldwell family photographs. Melissa at graduation. Melissa at a charity dinner. Frank receiving a business award. There were photographs from holidays, company events, and community fundraisers. Hannah was almost never in them. That summer, she had worked temporarily at Caldwell Memorial Services. She scanned old records, named electronic files, and checked page counts. She had been proud of her first paycheck. I still remember the way she held it before depositing it, smiling because she had earned every dollar herself. When the staff photograph appeared in my mother's hallway, Hannah was missing from that too. I asked about it once. My mother said the photographer must have arrived after Hannah left for the day. Hannah only shrugged. "It's okay, Mom." She said that too easily. At the time, I thought it meant she was mature. Later, I understood that some children become easygoing because they have learned that admitting they are hurt makes the adults around them uncomfortable. 3 days before Christmas, Melissa asked Hannah a question that sounded harmless. "Do you still remember your archive password?" For the first time, I wondered why a summer job that had ended months earlier suddenly mattered right before our flight. Melissa's question stayed with me longer than I expected that night. The night before our flight, all of us gathered at my mother's house because the airport car was scheduled before sunrise. Suitcases lined the entryway. The coffee maker was ready for morning. The Weather Channel played quietly while Frank checked the snow forecast every few minutes. My mother moved through the house with the printed itinerary in her hand, checking times as if she had planned the trip herself. Melissa was more interested in the hotel. She complained that the suite in San Diego should have had a better balcony. Hannah stood near the hallway mirror in the red sweater she had bought for the family picture. She looked at herself, then asked me whether it was too bright. I told her it looked perfect. Later, in the kitchen, Melissa leaned against the counter and asked, "Do you still remember your archive password?" Hannah looked up from her mug. "My account expired when the summer job ended." Melissa smiled. "I reactivated it. There's one little thing you can finish tomorrow." I stopped folding our boarding papers. "Tomorrow, we'll be flying." Melissa gave a small laugh and said it was only year-end cleanup. 10 minutes, maybe less. Then she turned toward Frank and asked about the road conditions. That was all. Nothing she said sounded impossible, and that was probably why I let it go. In families like mine, the most dangerous answers are not always obvious lies. Sometimes they sound reasonable enough to make you feel rude for asking one more question. After that, Hannah became quieter. She left half her dessert on the plate. She checked her phone more than once. Later, she asked whether the airport car really had to come so early. I thought she was nervous about flying. Before bed, I told her tomorrow will be fun. I wish I could say I noticed what was wrong in her face. I did not. Close to midnight, I woke with a dry throat. The heater hummed softly. The refrigerator clicked on downstairs. When I stepped into the hallway, the old floorboard near the stairs gave its usual quiet creak. Then I saw a thin line of light under the laundry room door. My mother was speaking inside. Her voice was gentle. Too gentle. "You're old enough to stay home alone, aren't you?" I stayed in the dark hallway and listened. My mother's voice was soft enough that, for a second, it almost sounded kind. "You're old enough to stay home alone, aren't you?" Hannah did not answer right away. Then my mother said, "We want this trip to be for real family only." My hand tightened around the empty glass I was holding. There it was. Not a misunderstanding, not poor timing, not one of those little family slights I had spent years explaining away. Then came the part that changed everything. "Don't upset your mother," she said. "She spent too much money to cancel now." That sentence told me she had thought this through. She knew I had saved for nearly 2 years. She knew I hated wasting money. She knew the deposits were paid, and the car was coming before sunrise. More than anything, she knew I was usually the person who kept everyone calm. She was counting on the cost of the trip to keep me obedient. Then I heard her add, "Tomorrow morning, do that little job Melissa left you. Then no one can say we abandoned you." If it had only been the insult, I might have opened the door, but that little job stopped me. When I was younger, I thought silence meant you were too afraid to fight back. By then, I had learned something different. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is not the weakest. Sometimes she is the only one who has not yet let the other person know how much she understands. I went back to the guest room. A few minutes later, Hannah came in. She thought I was asleep. She opened her suitcase and began taking things out. First her swimsuit, then a dress, then the new sandals we had bought for California. She did not cry. That made it worse. Last, she lifted the red sweater she had chosen for the family picture. She held it for a few seconds, then folded it carefully and placed it in the dresser drawer. "Did Grandma ask you to stay?" I said. Hannah turned toward me and tried to smile. "Please don't cancel the trip. They'll say I ruined Christmas." "You didn't ruin anything. I'm 17. I can stay here. It's fine." Looking back, that is the part that still makes me uncomfortable. It had taken me almost 50 years to stop asking my mother for permission to trust my own feelings. My daughter was 17, and somehow she had already started learning the same habit from me. I moved closer. "What exactly are you supposed to do tomorrow?" Hannah was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into the pocket of her coat and pulled out a badge I had never seen before. Hannah placed the badge on the bed between us. It was not the green one she had worn during the summer. This one was new. Her name was printed across the front, along with temporary archive assistant. I turned it over. Valid December 24 through December 26. 3 days. The exact 3 days the rest of us were supposed to be in California. Hannah reached into her coat again and pulled out a brass key marked "Rear Staff Entrance." Then came a sealed envelope, a temporary username and password, and a single page of typed instructions. Aunt Melissa said it's just the same filing I did last summer. That part made sense. During the summer, Hannah had scanned documents, renamed electronic files, checked page counts, and closed archive batches when everything matched. She had never approved payments or handled customer money. The instructions looked ordinary at first. Arrive before 8:30. Use the rear staff entrance. Go directly to the lower records room. Use scanner 3. Scan the contents of box 14. Verify the page count. Select close archive batch. Do not leave until release is confirmed. I read the last line twice. Why exactly 9? Hannah shook her head. Melissa had only said there was a year-end deadline, but it was Christmas Eve. The year still had several days left. Hannah told me box 14 was downstairs under the counter in the laundry room. I went to look. The box was gray, sealed with plastic bands, with the number 14 written across the top. I did not open it. I did not cut the seals. There was a narrow gap along one side. Through it, I could see folder tabs with names on them. I recognized some. They had been clients of Caldwell Memorial Services. A few had died years earlier. That bothered me in a way I could not explain yet. People often paid for funeral arrangements in advance because they did not want their children carrying the cost later. Seeing those names inside a sealed box prepared for my daughter made the room feel colder. I photographed the box from the outside. And then the badge, the key, the instruction sheet, the envelope. My daughter's phone buzzed. Melissa had sent a message. "Do not be late tomorrow." Another appeared a moment later. "And do not open the box before 9. Hannah looked at me. I told her not to answer. People imagine evidence begins with some dramatic secret. In real life, it often begins with ordinary things. A timestamp, a key, a message someone assumes you will delete. I sent every photograph to Janet and typed one sentence. "Call me when you wake up. Urgent." A few minutes later, my phone rang. Janet did not ask what I thought was happening. She said, "Don't open that box." Janet's voice was calm and practical. "Don't open the box. Don't use the credentials. Don't test the badge. Preserve the messages." I looked at Hannah, then back at the photographs on my phone. Am I overreacting? Janet separated the two things immediately. My mother telling Hannah she was not part of the family was already enough reason to get my daughter out of that house. The badge, the password, the locked building, and the exact time were different. Those needed to stay untouched. She did not call it fraud. She did not guess. She only told me to preserve everything. After we hung up, I looked at our original flight time. We were supposed to leave Minneapolis before 7. Hannah had been told to close the batch at 9. If the morning went exactly as planned, my mother, Frank, Melissa, and I would all be in the air. Hannah would be the only one left in Stillwater. At 9, every adult who could explain what happened was supposed to have an airline record showing we were somewhere else. I opened the airline app. My thumb stopped over cancel reservation. Nearly $20,000 was not an abstract number to me. It was weekends I had skipped, lunches packed from home, overtime I had taken when I was tired, and a car I had kept driving years longer than I wanted. Then I heard my mother's words again. She spent too much money to cancel now. That was what made me press the button. I canceled the flights first, then the hotel rooms, then the suite, then the airport transportation. Each confirmation email felt like another door closing. Hannah watched me book 2 new seats. "You canceled theirs?" "I canceled the trip I paid for." Her face tightened. "They're going to blame me." I turned toward her. "I'm not canceling because of you. I'm canceling because no one gets to use my money to leave you behind." Before we left, I wrote a note on the back of the printed itinerary. Hannah would not stay behind. She would not use the temporary account. She would not enter the funeral home at 9. I had photographed everything they gave her, and copies now existed outside the family. Every part of the trip I had paid for was canceled. I ended with one sentence. "You wanted a trip for real family only." I finally understood what that meant. We stepped outside while the sky was still black. Our footprints were the first marks across the fresh snow. Hannah looked back at the house once. I did not. By the time we reached the airport, my phone had started vibrating without pause. No one asked whether Hannah was safe. No one apologized. No one asked why she had been left behind. Then my mother called. Her first question was, "Did Hannah open box 14? My mother's question landed harder the second time. "Did Hannah open box 14? Hannah was asleep against my shoulder at gate C12. No. Behind my mother, I heard Melissa say, "That batch had to close at 9. "What happens at 9? Neither answered. My mother's voice hardened. "Bring Hannah back before you make this worse. Do not contact Hannah directly." Then I ended the call. People often reveal what matters most by the first question they ask when control slips away. If my mother cared about the trip, she would have asked about the flights. If she cared about Hannah, she would have asked whether she was safe. She asked about box 14. Minutes later, Hannah's phone received an automated message. Batch 14 failed to close. Pre-need refund release suspended. I did not know what that meant. Janet explained that it involved money customers had paid in advance for funeral arrangements, so their children would not carry the cost later. This was not office cleanup. Janet contacted a compliance examiner named Monica Reed. The first findings made my stomach tighten. There were 27 refund requests totaling about $347,600. They were already prepared. The missing step was completion of the digital archive package. Hannah could not approve a refund. That should have reassured me. It did not. Monica explained that Hannah's job would have been simple. Scan the documents. Verify the page count. Close the archive batch. That ordinary action would attach the paperwork to refund requests already waiting in the system. My daughter had not been given the power to steal money. She had been given an innocent task that could make it look as if she had. Then came the second discovery. Hannah's temporary badge was the only credential scheduled for the lower records floor between 8:30 and 10. The hallway camera was set for maintenance. Her account permissions had been increased the night before. By 9, every adult in our family was supposed to be on a plane. Then Monica found the internal memo. Hey, Miller Education Advance. Melissa had read Hannah's scholarship essay. She knew my daughter worried about college tuition. They had prepared the trail. They had prepared a motive. Hannah looked at me. They were going to say I stole it? They were building a record that would make people ask that question. That was when I understood the difference between a lie and a trap. A lie needs belief for a moment. A trap is built so others will believe it after you are gone. Later, Monica sent a transaction diagram. The refunds were routed through an old business account. Janet read the name and went silent. What? Rebecca, the account is registered under your father's name. Miller Family Consulting, LLC. The father I had believed for nearly 20 years was an embezzler. If you are still listening, please tell me in the comments how satisfied you are with this story so far, so I know there are still friends walking beside me. Your presence is the greatest encouragement I have to keep telling you. The final part, Miller Family Consulting. I stared at those words longer than I want to admit. For most of my life, I had worked hard to prove I was nothing like my father. Now an account carrying his name sat at the center of something that had almost placed my daughter in a financial investigation. My mother had told the same story for nearly 20 years. My father had handled financial records for Caldwell Memorial Services. Money disappeared from prepaid funeral accounts. System logs carried his username. A business account with the Miller name received transfers. His professional standing was damaged. He left town, and the marriage ended. My mother always said, "Your father chose pride over his family." I believed her. When birthday cards came, I sent one back unopened. When he left voicemails, I deleted them without listening. I told myself that if he really loved me, he would have fought harder to reach me. When I was younger, I thought the parent who stayed must be the loyal one. It took me years to understand that physical closeness does not automatically make someone truthful. That did not mean my father had been perfect. He had a temper. I remembered arguments that shook the walls. After the scandal, he became bitter, and there were stretches when he pulled away. I was not trying to rewrite him into a saint. I was beginning to ask a harder question. Could a flawed man still have been falsely accused? I called my mother. Why is Miller Family Consulting receiving the refunds? She was not nearly as surprised as I expected. That was your father's company. Was it? There was a pause. Then her tone changed. She said Hannah and I were exactly like him. Suspicious, ungrateful, always looking for corruption where there was none. When I asked about the account again, she stopped talking about my father and started talking about consequences. 42 employees could lose their jobs. The funeral home could be suspended. Scheduled services could be disrupted. Families in town would suffer. That was when I recognized a pattern. My mother rarely answered a difficult question with the truth. She answered by describing everyone who would be hurt if I kept asking it. Janet called later that evening. She had found my father's old disciplinary case. A technical appendix was missing from the main file, but a duplicate had survived in an insurance archive. One date stood out. The system said my father had altered Caldwell accounts that day. The hospital record said he was recovering from a car accident and could not leave his bed. Both records could not be true. Janet and Monica spent the next several hours going through the technical appendix. I did not understand every system term, and they did not try to turn me into an expert. They explained only what mattered. An administrator account had logged in after the original activity. The server time had been changed. Several actions were reassigned to my father's username. And while those changes were supposedly happening, my father was being treated in a hospital after a car accident. Someone had made the system look as if he had done things he could not physically have done. That was when I remembered the letter. My father had sent it before he died. I had kept it for years without opening it. My mother had looked at the envelope once and said, "It's probably another excuse." I believed her. Again, Janet told me to photograph the envelope before I opened it, so I did. Inside, my father wrote about the prepaid funeral accounts. He said money had been moved into operating expenses because the business was short on cash. My mother had called the transfers short-term loans needed to make payroll. He refused to sign the reconciliation. Not long after that, Miller Family Consulting appeared in the records. He wrote that someone had used his tax information and a copy of his signature. He started saving documents. Then came the accident. When he returned, the records had changed, but the part that hurt most had nothing to do with money. He wrote that he had tried to see me. My mother and Frank turned him away. He sent letters. Some came back unopened. He called. I did not answer. For years I had been angry because I thought he had not fought hard enough for me. That night I had to consider something much harder. Maybe he had fought. Maybe I had helped close the last doors because I believed the version of the story that made my life easier to understand. That did not make me responsible for what happened to him, but it did mean I had been wrong. A former bookkeeper later confirmed that my father had questioned missing refunds before the scandal. He had asked for original cancellation forms. After that, my mother began telling employees he had financial problems. Frank knew there was a dispute, but he wanted it handled inside the family. That was how reputations worked in a small community. A lie did not always win because it was clever. Sometimes it won because the person repeating it had spent years becoming someone nobody wanted to question. Then Melissa called from a number I did not recognize. Her voice was low. "You think Hannah is the first person Mom ever cornered like this?" I said nothing. Then she whispered, "Ask her what happened the night your father tried to take you away." The call ended. The investigation had moved far enough that Janet arranged a formal meeting at her office. We did not meet at my mother's house. I was done letting serious questions become family arguments around a kitchen table. Janet sat beside me. Monica was across from us with her files. My mother, Melissa, and Frank each came with counsel. Hannah stayed away. I would not make my daughter sit across from people who had prepared to place blame on her. I did not raise my voice. I asked Melissa why Hannah's badge had been active for only 3 days, why her account had been upgraded, why the camera had been scheduled offline, why her badge was the only one expected on that floor. Melissa had an answer for each question. Year-end work, system settings, a malfunctioning camera. but the records did not support her. Her explanations became shorter. Then she started looking toward my mother. That was when Eleanor stopped denying everything. She said the funeral home had been under pressure. Cash flow was tight. Payroll had to be met. 42 employees depended on the business, and families still had funerals scheduled. Monica asked one direct question. Were customer funds redirected without authorization? My mother would not call it theft. She called it a temporary movement of funds. I remember thinking that greed rarely introduces itself as greed. The most dangerous kind often speaks in the language of duty and responsibility. I looked at my mother. If the money was only temporary, why did anyone need to take the blame? She answered quietly. Someone had to carry it. Why Hannah? The room went still. Melissa turned toward her. Frank looked up. Monica stopped writing. My mother looked directly at me. Better a Miller than a Caldwell. I did not cry. I did not shout. I finally understood. She knew Hannah was innocent. My daughter had not been chosen by mistake. In my mother's world, a Miller was simply easier to sacrifice. Frank said he had never created those accounts. I looked at him. No, you just kept signing whatever made the questions go away. After speaking with his attorney, he opened a leather folder and placed an old settlement draft on the table. My mother had offered my father money to accept responsibility, leave Cedar Ridge, and agree not to contact me without permission. He had never signed it. In the margin, in my mother's handwriting, were 5 words, necessary to protect the Caldwell name. The digital records, the former bookkeeper, and the settlement all pointed in the same direction. Monica closed her folder and announced an immediate temporary suspension of Caldwell Memorial Services Authority over prepaid funds. My mother stared at me. When this closes the funeral home, remember that you did it to your own family. That was when I knew she still did not understand. I was not destroying the family. I had simply stopped letting her decide who had to be destroyed to keep it intact. The investigation lasted for months. Real consequences did not arrive in one dramatic afternoon. Records had to be reviewed and accounts protected. An independent operator took over Caldwell Memorial Services. Funerals still happened. Customers were not abandoned. Most honest employees kept their jobs, and the prepaid accounts were placed under outside supervision. For years, my mother had made people believe that protecting the Caldwell family was the same as protecting the business. Once she was removed and the business kept functioning, I saw the difference. Sometimes people in power convince everyone that an institution cannot survive without them. Often, they cannot survive losing control of it. I met 2 customers during the review. One was a widow who had paid into her funeral plan for years because she did not want her children carrying the cost after she died. The other was a retired teacher who believed his burial expenses were fully covered. They did not care about our Christmas argument. They wanted to know where their money had gone. That changed something in me. Hannah had almost become one more vulnerable person inside a system built on trust. Older customers had signed paperwork and gone home believing they had made life easier for their children. My mother responded publicly. She called me an estranged daughter who had canceled a family trip over a private disagreement. She suggested Hannah had accessed confidential records and claimed I was destroying a community institution. I wanted to answer every accusation. Janet stopped me. Our statement was simple. Hannah had not entered the building on Christmas Eve. She had not used the system. She was cooperating through counsel. When someone is used to controlling the story, your first instinct is to speak louder. Sometimes the better choice is refusing to turn truth into a shouting contest. Then my mother made one last offer. Through her attorney, she offered a public apology, full college tuition for Hannah, and a graduate school trust worth more than I had ever saved. In return, I had to call box 14 an internal control failure instead of an intentional setup. I refused. I had started this story using money to buy my daughter a place in the family. My mother was ending it by using money to buy my silence. Both times, money was being asked to do the work love should have done. But she also wanted Hannah beside her in an apology video. Hannah did not hesitate. She can apologize without using me again. A week later, Janet placed an envelope in front of me. It came from the State Accounting Board. It was addressed to the estate of David Miller. I opened the notice from the State Accounting Board at Janet's office. My father's professional record had been amended. The old misconduct finding was withdrawn. The board acknowledged altered records, false testimony, and evidence that did not support the transactions blamed on him. My father had been dead for years. He would never read the correction. There was no triumph in that moment, only relief mixed with grief. Over the following months, my mother accepted responsibility for fraud, falsified records, and misuse of identifying information. Melissa admitted creating Hannah's temporary badge, changing her permissions, scheduling the camera outage, and entering the education memo. Her cooperation reduced some consequences, but not her responsibility. Frank lost his authority in the business and faced civil liability for what he had signed, hidden, and refused to question. An independent company continued the funeral work. Honest employees kept their jobs, and restitution began reaching customers. Justice did not require burning everything down. One cold morning, I took my father's amended notice and final letter to his grave. Snow rested along the stone. I did not tell him he had been a perfect father. I only said, "You didn't do what they said you did." Justice that comes too late cannot return lost years. Sometimes all the living can restore is the truth attached to a person's name. Hannah graduated that spring. Every official record cleared her, and the scholarship organizations received corrections. She did not let Box 14 choose her future. She chose the field she had loved before any of this happened. At graduation, she wore the red sweater again because she liked it. The next Christmas, we returned to California. No suite, no luxury van, no printed itinerary, just us. On our final morning, Hannah balanced her phone on a railing and set the timer. The wind blew my hair across my face, and she laughed before the picture was taken. It was imperfect. For the first time, I did not wonder who was missing. "Do you ever regret canceling that Christmas trip?" she asked. I thought about the money, my mother, my sister, my father, and all the years spent trying to earn a place at someone else's table. I regret spending so many years believing I had to earn a place at their table, I said, but I will never regret waking up that morning and taking you with me. I once thought real family was a title someone else could give or take away. I was wrong. Family is defined by what people do when protecting you costs them something. The greatest thing I recovered was the freedom to stop asking whether my daughter and I belonged. Do you think I was right to cancel everything that morning after everything Eleanor did? Would you ever have allowed her back into your life? Most of all, were you satisfied with the way this story ended? I'd truly like to know what you would have done in my place.